From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Millicent Walker.
Tonight, U.S. court issues arrest warrants for Deputy Commissioner of Police Abba Kyari over his alleged roles in the fraud involving Hush Puppy. Inspector General of Police orders internal review of the allegations. Nigeria to get about $120 million from the Global Partnership on Education for the development of the education sector. The President says education is top priority for his administration. Federal government to invest $200 million to boost healthcare infrastructure under the Health Intervention Initiative of the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority. And a public inquiry into the assassination of Maltese investigative journalist Daphne Galizia finds the state responsible for her death. Plus business sports news from Abuja and later international news from our studio in London.
On business news tonight, Central Bank begins immediate refund of capital deposits and licensing fees to pending Bureau de Change operators.
On sports news tonight, Nigeria is left with 12 athletes for track and field events at the Olympics as Athletics Integrity Unit disqualifies 10 for not complying with drug testing requirements.
And from Abuja, over 1,000 ghost workers removed from the payroll of the Bauchi state government, with over 763 million naira saved as a result.
And the U.S. Magistrate Court has issued an arrest warrant for Deputy Commissioner of Police Abba Kyari. The warrant was issued by a judge in the United States District Court for the Central District of California, Mr. Otis Wright. The court ordered the Federal Bureau of Investigation to track down Kyari and produce him in the U.S. to face trial for his alleged roles in the fraud. This came after the police chief was mentioned as a beneficiary in an international fraud case of $1.1 million involving Ramon Abbas, popularly known as Hush Puppy, and his crime syndicate. Hush Puppy told U.S. prosecutors that he gave Mr. Kyari part of the proceeds of the crime. He also stated in a plea agreement document on Wednesday that he got Mr. Kyari to arrest one of the Nigerian accomplices when they had a disagreement. But Mr. Kyari has denied receiving money from Hush Puppy. He took to his official Facebook page today and stated that no money was paid to him. According to him, 2 years ago, Hush Puppy alleged that the life of his family members was threatened by one Vincent, who was arrested but later released after it was realized that nobody's life was threatened. Meanwhile, the Inspector General of Police has ordered an internal review of the allegations against Mr. Kyari. In a statement, the police boss reaffirmed their commitment to the pursuit of justice and the strengthening of its professional relationship with the FBI and other international partners. And to other stories now, the federal government is set to invest $200 million to boost health infrastructure. This is under the Health Intervention Initiative of the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, NSIA. This is according to the Managing Director of the NSIA, Mr. Uche Oji, who notes that major investments in the manufacture of essential drugs, vaccines, and construction of cancer centers in the nation's health system will be embarked upon to discontinue huge dependence on foreign logistics. He was speaking at the State House special weekly briefing. Our State House correspondent Gloria Mizuke reports.
Nigeria's long-term investment is central at this weekly special briefing by the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority, NSIA, at the State House. $200 million is a major financial projection to advance among 20 other health projects, manufacturing of drugs, vaccines, construction of world-class hospitals, and cancer centers by the NSIA.
This is why we need to build these things here, because there's a limit to trade. There's a limit to how much you can import. There's a limit to how much you can travel. We saw that limit last year and this year. So we must build these things locally. So regardless of the raised currency, this one, we must do these things now. Because guess what? It's a source of foreign exchange. That's when we do them. So we're trying to raise a $200 million fund, not just us. There are other investors that have indicated interest.
311 billion naira is the total contract sum for the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. The NSIA is hoping to manage this, among other major highways, through an effective tolling system.
So let me put it this way. When the concessions are completed and the roads are operational, NSIA will own the operating company. NSIA, I started at the beginning to tell you, is owned by everybody. Federal government, state government, local government, FCT. So every Nigerian is a stakeholder. This is not a private entity you're giving the tolling. NSIA will have a vehicle that will toll and maintain and manage these roads on a commercial basis.
Among a range of other issues, fertilizer racketeering is another concern the federal government vows to deal with.
There's an agreement that was had with the industry around pricing for MPK 2010-10. So if you have one or two areas where people are trying to racketeer, do let us know. Report to your state government. This is not right. It is not for one or two persons to try and racketeer. That would be illegal. That's economic sabotage. And let me also remind you all, the president has ordered EFCC to look into these things. It's a clear directive.
It is also important to note that the $1.7 billion Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund will be channeled into the construction of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. As a matter of fact, that fund would also go into the first phase of the second Niger Bridge, the Abuja to Kano Road, and the Mambila Hydropower project, all of which will be completed by July 2022. From the Presidential Villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
The Minister of State for Health, Professor Oloronimbe Mamora, says Nigeria is due to receive 4 million doses of Moderna COVID-19 vaccines in the next few days. Professor Mamora stated this after he was inaugurated as an honorary fellow of the Academy of Medicine Specialties in Lagos. He also gave assurance that government is working to improve the condition of the health sector in the country. Nigeria got her first batch of almost 4 million doses of the Oxford-AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccines on March the 2nd and has since completed the first round of vaccinations.
This government is closing the infrastructural gaps through the upgrade of facilities and establishment of new ones. A good example is the ongoing equipping of molecular laboratories, intensive care units, oxygen plants installation, and the building of isolation centers across the country to treat critically ill COVID-19 cases. I want to seize this opportunity to alert you that the third wave of COVID-19 is virtually here with us in Nigeria. And all efforts should be made to observe the COVID-19 protocols to prevent the spread of the virus. The government has made necessary arrangements to take delivery of additional doses of COVID-19 vaccines that will assist in combating the disease. In fact, information at my disposal says 4 million doses of Moderna vaccines will arrive in Nigeria in the next few days.
And to other stories, for the second time running, Justice Obiora Igwatu of the Federal High Court Abuja has ordered the DSS to produce the aides of Sunday Igboho in court. He told the DSS that when a court of competent jurisdiction gives an order, such must be respected and obeyed. Justice Igwatu also made an order directing the DSS to make way for the counsel to the aides to see them between today and the next adjourned date. At the resumed hearing, counsel to the DSS said it wasn't their intention to disrespect the court, as some of the names of the applicants were not in their custody, and most of the aids have been taken away for verification of fact. He adds that they would release them when investigations are completed, as they have no intention to keep them indefinitely. Counsel to the aides asked the court to sanction the DSS for deliberately disrespecting the court. He further asked that the court orders the DSS to release the aides on bail and grant him access to them. And gunmen today raided the Nasarawa State Ministry of Finance, Budget and Planning, carting away undisclosed amount of money said to run into millions of naira. The gunmen are said to have trailed 2 staff from the bank to the ministry in Lafia, the state capital, seized the money at gunpoint after shooting sporadically in the air. The Commissioner of Finance, Aruna Bole, said the money is in millions but did not disclose the exact amount. He added that the incident is being investigated while the cashier is undergoing treatment after sustaining bullet wounds. And Nigeria is getting about $120 million from the Global Partnership Agitation. This is to be used in developing the sector, particularly regarding the girl-child education. This was part of the outcome of Nigeria's participation at the Global Education Summit in London today. The president joined other world leaders at the summit, where they made 5-year pledges to help transform education systems in up to 90 countries and territories around the world. During a panel discussion, President Muhammadu Buhari said education occupies top priority in his administration.
Absolutely. Let me come to you, President.
Education is a starting point.
Yes.
Anybody who missed the opportunity of receiving education, he has missed everything. Because you cannot succeed outside your educational qualification. This is very clear to everybody, hence the fight for opportunities for education is very, very severe. The problem of infrastructure, physical and intellectual. Physical is the sense of classrooms, equipment,
textbooks.
Intellectual, the teachers, and convincing those who are really qualified to go into teaching profession. Teaching profession, you would rather go where engineers are wanted, where they will award contracts,
yes,
rather than fight children day in and day out. So I assure you that Nigerians are acutely aware of the priorities of education. And they are going all out to make the necessary savings and make the necessary inputs to make sure that their children and their wards get the opportunity to have the best of education.
The Minister of State for Education, Chukwuemeka Nwajuba, who is one of the top government officials on the president's entourage, gave some insight into how the country got its share of the fund.
200 million.
GP has been around for the past almost 2 decades, right? Now, this is the third or fourth tranche of allocations that are going to be made. The push today is the Prime Minister of Britain and the President of Kenya reaching out for a fundraising and to put nearly 5 billion into a plate. Now, the GPE itself, which is the global partnership for education, seeks to address the gaps in education fulfillment for everybody around the world. Now, Nigeria is a partner country. We're not a donor country. So if you're a partner country, your first response will be to listen carefully to what is being raised. But if you're a partner country, your first response will be make yourself available to get as much as a chunk of what it is. Throughout all the meetings we've had Tuesday and Wednesday, we've now gotten a commitment that seems like Nigeria will walk away with nearly $120 million that we'll then negotiate how we can use them, especially targeting the states that are most vulnerable, because there are large areas in the country where a lot of impact hasn't been made. And we're here I'm not sure whether all the countries will be happy that we are walking away with that. Everybody believes that Nigeria is an oil company, oil state, and if we could, but we also try to explain that in spite of the fact that Nigeria is an oil producing country, its debt servicing ratios are very, very high. To build infrastructure across big swaths of country like this is a very, very high estimate. The security challenges are very, very, very high. A lot of our people that we've already trained are not in the country. They are in diaspora servicing everybody else in the world except Nigeria.
In part two, after the break, we have more on the sidelines of the summit in London. Plus, PDP stalwarts, former Vice President Atiku-Wike and Governor Atiku-Wike meet in Port Harcourt to iron out their differences ahead of the 2023 general elections. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. U.S. court issues arrest warrants for Deputy Commissioner of Police Abba Kyari over his alleged roles in the fraud involving Hush Puppy. Inspector General of Police orders internal review of the allegations. Nigeria to get about $120 million from the Global Partnership on Education for the development of the sector. The president says education is top priority for his administration. Federal government to invest $200 million to boost health infrastructure under the Health Intervention Initiative of the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority. And a public inquiry into the assassination of Maltese investigative journalist Daphne Galizia finds the state responsible for her death. We continue on the sidelines of the London summit. The president met with the Prime Minister Boris Johnson of Britain, where they praised the war against terrorism, acts of terrorism in Nigeria, and agreed that the judicial process be allowed to run without interference. President Buhari also reviewed the security situation in the different regions of the country, while Prime Minister Johnson pledged Britain's preparedness to lend a helping hand to Nigeria. The two leaders equally discussed how to increase trade between the two countries, develop solar and wind power, and the leadership of the Commonwealth. Meanwhile, President Buhari said Nigeria will be glad to receive support from the Commonwealth in diverse areas of needs and challenges during a bilateral meeting with Commonwealth Secretary-General Baroness Patricia Scotland. Baroness Scotland explained that the Commonwealth had developed programs on agribusiness, adding value to agriculture products for young people to get involved, climate change, criminal justice reforms, police reforms, and security, inviting Nigeria to benefit from technical assistance that can be provided. She added that the Commonwealth has developed anti-corruption benchmark tools and would like to work with Nigeria in both public and private sectors. And to other stories, former Vice President Atiku-Wike says Nigerians are becoming eager to see the People's Democratic Party return to power in 2023 in order to solve the country's growing security and economic challenges. Mr. Abubakar stated this during a two-day private visit to Governor Atiku-Wike at the River State Government House in Port Harcourt to reconcile with the governor on party affairs ahead of the 2023 elections. The former vice president described the current security situation in the country as the worst in his 70-year lifetime, adding that there is no better time for the PDP to unveil its policies to salvage the country from what he describes as the APC's failures.
I came here to consult with the governor, on party affairs and how we can ensure there is unity and stability of our party, so that we can take over government in 2023. I believe Nigerians can't wait for 2023 to come so that PDP will return. Yes, we have security challenges all over the country, but in Rivers it's not as bad in other states. So I think we commend him for his leadership. I have never seen it this bad. I am 70 plus. I have never seen it this bad in terms of security challenges, in terms of economy, in terms of unemployment. I have never seen it so bad. This is the worst. We'll come up, with our policies which we will present to Nigerians when the time comes. We will do that. You know that we can do. We have done that before as PDP. We recorded the highest growth in this country, the best foreign reserves. We reduce unemployment. You know that we can do it.
Well, staying with politics, some feathers may have been ruffled by the Supreme Court judgment on the Ondo State governorship election and its implications on the current leadership of the All Progressives Congress. But ahead of the states and local governments congresses of the party, its national legal advisor, Mr. Nia Kintola, is asking members not to be deterred by the various interpretations people are giving to the judgment. He says that the judgment does not in any way affect the party's interim national chairman, Governor May Malabuni, as been speculated. The APC legal advisor addressed journalists at the party's headquarters in Abuja.
I do appreciate the fact that intra-party crises and tendencies do exist in political parties. But people must be bold enough and be courageous enough to act within the ambit of the law. You don't attribute to a judgment what it does not contain. You cannot even read into an act what it does not contain. There's nowhere in the judgment of the majority where the efficacy of the office of our chairman, national chairman, was questioned. Nowhere. As a matter of fact, if anything, what happened was that the judgment of the tribunal that says that the holding of political office, party position, does not contravene Section 183 of the Constitution still stands. It should not be intimidated by anybody. Our party remain firm. The Congress of the party will go on as scheduled on Saturday, inshallah. By the grace of God, everything that has been put in place will come to fruition. Everything that has been put in place by the party will come to fruition. Because you can imagine the kind of confusion that the country will have been thrown into if the judgment of yesterday had gone the other way.
The phased rehabilitation work at the Port Harcourt Refinery, which has commenced at the complex, is part of a grand design to return Nigeria to an energy-sufficient country, as well as a net exporter of refined petroleum products. That's according to the Group Managing Director of the Nigeria National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, Malam Mele Kyari. Speaking to Channels Television, Mr. Kyari says the 3 refineries in Nigeria are not dead plans, as many have been made to believe. Our energy correspondent, Olu Phillips, tells us more.
From Port Harcourt, the capital of Rivers State, lies a strategic national asset in Alessa, Eleme, some 25 kilometers east of Port Harcourt. This is the Port Harcourt Refineries. Regarded as Nigeria's premier refinery, the Port Harcourt Refinery Company Limited comprises the oldest and the newest of government-owned refineries. Both are embedded in one complex. The first was built in 1965 with capacity of 35,000 barrels per stream day, and by 1972 it got increased to 60,000 barrels, while the second was commissioned in 1989. The combined production capacity 210,000 barrels per stream day.
An installed capacity of about 150,000.
But someday, somehow, some things started going south, and these plants were stripped of their operational life. Outputs dwindled until 3 years ago when a decision was made to shut it down altogether. So in the history of this refinery, it has only undergone maintenance only 3 times. And the last time was in 2000, 21 years ago. Those times were 1992, 1994, and the year 2000, 2 and 6 years intervals.
What we're trying to do now different is not just turnaround maintenance, it's a big brother of turnaround maintenance, which is total rehabilitation. And at this point, we've taken time to really come through the facility, did a detailed inspection around the whole facility, established clearly what we need to do to bring these facilities to almost brand new status. That will guarantee all these operations at least a minimum of 90% of this capacity and beyond.
Let's talk about the yields and the value it brought to the domestic market when it worked. It produced 11.5 million liters of PMS, 9 million liters of AGO, that is diesel, 5 million liters of DPK, that is dual-purpose kerosene, 4.6 million liters of fuel oil, and 1.3 million liters of LPG per day production. All that is at zero levels as of this material time.
We had gradual deterioration of the plants, and then that kept on reducing, the capacity utilization until it came very close to less than 20% and became almost uneconomical to run.
Some 7.5 kilometers away is a jetty that serves the refinery's crude supply and evacuation line linked by these pipelines. Here you could see signs of aging on the facility, from the twin loading arm that can receive crude from vessels and also discharge refined petroleum products to compressors, pumps, valves. Everything is requiring some form of attention. As strenuous as these stories sound to the mind, the federal government says it has mapped out a strategy to bring this facility up to 90% output performance in the ongoing rehabilitation, which has since commenced here. Now the big question is, can this refinery be fixed? And in terms of cost optimization, what's the better option? Build, rehabilitate, or sell?
Refineries are very much like aircraft. You can always fix them. So being aware that you have an asset in your hand that you own, that you can fix, selling will never be your first option. We're looking at the opportunities to build new refineries and also take equity in refineries that are being built, and of course, most speedily and much more easily to rehabilitate our own refinery that is in our hands. So we know that we're not taking Federation money to rehabilitate this refinery, contrary to what many people believe that, could have used this money for something else. We're not taking it from the Federation. We are borrowing from a consortium of banks, headed by Afrexim and very many other financing institutions. So we have no fears around financing because we're not going to take Federation money to do it.
The duration for the rehabilitation has been put at 44 months, but the Group Managing Director, NNPC, Kyari, says the project has been phased in a manner that first oil will be achieved quickly by month 18, then 32 months and 44 months accordingly, when the entire complex, including the 56 megawatts embedded power plant, would have undergone a complete rehabilitation and ready for recommissioning. Olu Phillips, Channels Television News.
When the News at 10 returns, over 1,000 ghost workers removed from the payroll of the Bauchi state government, plus central bank commences immediate refund of capital deposits and licensing fees to pending bureau de change applications. That's in business news. To join us again. We're up to Abuja now, where Malkwe Ogun Yusuf has some more stories. Hello, Malkwe.
Hello, Millicent. Good to see you again. The Bauchi state government says 1,115 ghost workers have been removed from its payroll, with over 763 million naira saved as a result. The Deputy Governor, Abba, who is also the chairman of the committee set up to find a lasting solution to the challenges of salary payment in the state public service, made this disclosure while submitting the report to the governor. Governor Bala Mohammed, on his part, noted that the monies realized will be used to employ genuine workers.
Former Commissioner, Minister for Local.
In the pharmaceutical sector, Medin Pharmaceuticals Limited, one of Nigeria's foremost pharmaceutical and healthcare providers, has launched an ultra-modern intravenous fluids production factory near Shagamu in Ogun State. At the formal opening ceremony, the managing director of the Bank of Industry, Mr. Olukayode Piton, said the financial institution is committed to bringing industrial projects to life. The Bank of Industry supported the company in building a facility with a production capacity of 100,000 bottles per day and is expected to deepen access to locally manufactured intravenous fluids whilst increasing access to quality healthcare for Nigerians.
Resilience, doggedness, and courage, all wrapped into one, is the story of Medin Pharmaceuticals' intravenous fluid factory. After over a decade of business, an expanded factory is born on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Officials and top management of Medin Pharmaceuticals Limited, 2 state governors, the Minister of Health, and the Managing Director of the Bank of Industry are among dignitaries present to witness the official commissioning.
As we sail on the ship of Medin Pharmaceuticals Limited, the waves and the storms were much, but God prevailed and used men and women who believe in extending goodwill and trust in economy to make the expansion of the factory possible.
With all the challenges along the way, the Bank of Industry says it's a business enabler.
When you come to a place like this, when you are commissioning a new project, that is the joy, that we derive to see projects, come to life.
From a humble 400 bottles per hour output to 4,000 bottles capacity, the company describes its growth as phenomenal.
Now we're at 21 million bottles. We've invested in so much infrastructure. We've increased our warehouse spacing from 100 square meters to 4,500 square meters. BOI is the foundation of why we exist today. I mean, they took the chance, they took the risk, they invested in us, and they continue to do that.
Then to the formal commissioning by the Ogun State Governor.
This plaque commemorates the official commissioning of Medin Pharmaceutical Facility by me, His Excellency Prince Dr. Abiodun, Governor of Ogun State, to the glory of the Almighty God and the use of every indigene of Ogun State and every citizen of Nigeria.
Medin Pharmaceuticals Limited is a sister company to Medin Hospital and Pharmaceutical Services Limited, incorporated in 1987. In 2010, the Medin Pharmaceuticals Limited plant was instituted as one of the local manufacturers of intravenous fluid in Nigeria.
In other news, the federal government has expressed dissatisfaction over poor revenue generated from the lottery and gaming industry in Nigeria. The Minister of Special Duties and Intergovernmental Affairs, Senator George Akume, stated government's position during the National Gaming Conference organized by the National Lottery Regulatory Commission in Lagos. The minister attributed the sad development to a lack of transparency and unethical practices among stakeholders.
Many had looked forward to it, and here it is. The maiden edition of the National Gaming Conference with relevant industry players, lawmakers and government officials in attendance. The gathering became necessary for stakeholders to understand the direction of the National Lottery Regulatory Commission in its bid to reposition the gaming industry in line with global practice.
The National Lottery Regulatory Commission is committed sustainably for transparent gaming driven by the principles of responsible gaming, professionalism, and leading technologies for social and economic development, and to meet the diverse needs of industry stakeholders and government officials. It's common knowledge that the industry has evolved and adopted technology to optimize operations so much that the excellent laws do not reflect the reality or trend of the present-day Nigerian gaming industry.
A vital concern for the government is revenue enhancement. The Minister of Special Duties and Intergovernmental Affairs, Senator George Akume, sadly notes that lottery revenues continue to fall short of industry potentials.
This is not only disappointing, it is unsustainable and unacceptable. Central monitoring system is desperately desirable to enable the government to block leakages being experienced in the industry.
Observers argue that the growth of the gaming industry is being hampered by sharp practices, including tax evasion and non-disclosure of financial transactions by operators, as well as multiplicity of regulations. These are some of the topical issues addressed during the two-day conference, from the keynote speaker to panel discussions and reactions from participants.
We need to look at training, it's very important, education is very important. If you ask me, everybody in the industry who has an employment or a stake there must know about responsible gambling, must know about money laundering. It's important. Those are prerequisites. Our legal framework needs to be aligned. I think that's the most important tool in us being able to reposition this industry.
In a 6-point communiqué, participants resolved that a strong legislation is required to fashion out a special tax regime for operators, ensure responsible gaming, and accommodate the concerns of all stakeholders in the gaming industry.
And First Bank Nigeria Limited had held its annual Spark initiative, and this year it's focusing on inspiring kindness in the education sector as part of its 2021 Corporate Social Responsibility and Sustainability Week. The Chief Executive Officer of First Bank, Mr. Adesola Adeduntan, said at the virtual event that acts of kindness are important in making economic changes, especially in times as this. The event, which attracted speakers from around the world, is to celebrate First Bank's 127th anniversary in Nigeria.
Nigeria's oldest financial institution, First Bank of Nigeria Limited, is celebrating its 127th anniversary. And what better way to do that than with the Spark initiative? SPARK is an acronym for Start Promoting Acts of Random Kindness, which is aimed at reawakening the spirit of kindness, a virtue socioeconomic circumstances have forced many to neglect. This year, First Bank has chosen to show kindness to the education sector.
Let us have an objective of working with other stakeholders to migrate about 1 million students to virtual learning platform. And in this regard, our partnership with Lagos State, our partnership with IBM, our partnership with Microsoft, and other organizations speaks volume.
The Lagos State government agrees the education sector deserves some love.
You don't know what you have done. We gave the devices on which we had uploaded our curriculum, schemes of work, teachers, lectures, drawings, also illustrations to children who would ordinarily never have access to such.
Beyond the educational institutions, other speakers believe it is imperative to pay attention to other areas of business.
It sometimes feels as if the whole world has lost its purpose. In fact, the world's in quite a dangerous place at the minute. Not just the pandemic, though the pandemic has really caused all of us to be challenged, but also the climate change crisis we're in, the economic downturn caused by the pandemic, the conflicts across the world. There's a real sense that we are losing values, we're losing our morality, we're losing what gives us purpose.
It leads me to the question whether what we have had so far is not an idealistic version, an aspiration, so to speak. But we need to come back to where we are, right? And how do we make the conversation realistic? How do we, is selfishness not the reality we encounter on an everyday basis? So that kindness here then becomes a way of swimming against the tide.
Since it was established in 1894, First Bank has consistently built relationships with customers, focusing on the fundamentals of excellent corporate governance, a strong sense of social responsibility that keeps impacting society.
Oh, kindness, that's certainly something that can inspire. It's back now to you, Millicent.
Right. Many thanks, Mark. It was a day of celebration today in Lagos as the Academy of Medicine Specialties of Nigeria performed its maiden inauguration and induction of honorary, emeritus, and foundation fellows. The ceremony had many dignitaries from different fields of medicine in attendance, including the Minister of Health and the Minister of State for Health, who were also inducted as honorary fellows. Our correspondent Mary Alale Yusuf reports.
Inductees of the Academy of Medicine Specialties file in as the ceremony begins.
To perform the duties of the office of
the Minister of Health has the honor of installing the Board of Trustees. From among them, Professor Oladapo Ashiru steps forward to be inaugurated as President of the Academy, and he takes the oath.
That I will faithfully discharge to the best of my ability.
The newly inducted president reveals some of the work ahead for his team. And as a renowned fertility specialist and pioneer of the first test tube baby in Africa, he also shares successes in his field of expertise.
And today, we have 100 IVF centers in Nigeria as a result of that work done in 1989.
More specialists are robed as honorary fellows, including the Minister of Health and Minister of State for Health.
I take special interest in the statement on collaboration with other bodies that share the aspirations of the Academy. I am also delighted to note that the Academy is ready to team up with government to study and seek solutions to challenges facing our health system.
This body of specialists is convinced that the Academy would be the solution to problems in the health sector, including brain drain and inadequate funding for important projects.
It's a body of think tanks on each heading, and we shall turn out information. We will follow them up until we see results.
Indeed, a day of fulfillment, yet different committees in the Academy of Medicine Specialties have their work cut out for them as they tackle problems of policy, infectious and non-communicable diseases, as well as reviving the sector of vaccine and medicine manufacture in the country. Mary Alale Yusuf, Channels Television News.
And it's straight to some business news. Here's Melinda Kilami.
Banking, so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
And thanks, Millicent. Welcome to Business News. The central bank says it will begin immediate refund of the 35 million naira minimum capital deposit to pending applications of Bureau de Change licenses. In a statement released today, the financial markets regulator also mentioned that it will refund licensing fees as it will no longer process or issue new licenses for BDC operations in the country. The move comes 2 days after the Apex Bank Governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, announced the decision of the Monetary Policy Committee to discontinue dollar sales to BDCs after it contravened the country's FX regulations. Meanwhile, the Association of BDC Operators of Nigeria says they are still providing foreign exchange services. Their president, Mr. Aminu Gwadabe, gave this assurance and explained that the recent pronouncement by the Apex Bank, that's the CBN, does not stop them from providing Forex services as allowed by their operating licenses and guidelines. He clarified that while the dollar sale from CBN had helped in enhancing supply, the fact still remains that BDCs are empowered to source FX from other sources and provide various services to members of the public. The president had called for a zonal nationwide meeting of its members to discuss the CBN's action and obtain contribution for the national BDC policy. The domestic stock market moved further into the bear territory today as extended profit-taking activities by investors lowered the month-to-date gain. Ini John Mekwa tells us about this red day at the stock exchange.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report.
A very bearish day today on the floor of the NGX. The all-share index dropped 0.79%. Even though the activity chart recorded some increases, deals went up about 16% to almost 5,000. Volume was also up 10% to about 260 million units shared today, while value rose by 5.53%, taking the total trade value today to about 2 billion. Major sectors were in the red today. Oil and gas down 1.93%, industrial goods down 2.02%, banking down 0.81%, consumer down 0.35%. A lot of reds there in the sectors, even O&O, even though it still made it to the top trades list today, but profit taking set in and we saw a drop in its share price. It went down by 51 naira, leaving it at 4 naira 75. But the market lost 159 billion naira today. A whole lot of profit taking there. But greener days are coming. That's the stock market report. I'm Ini John Mekwa.
Many thanks, Ini. Well, it's different strokes as it's mostly positive close for most of the world's leading stock markets. Investors digest latest earning results released by some big tech companies. And here's a look at the closing number. Is back to you, Millicent.
Banking, so easy, so simple. Dial star 894 hash now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Hey, thanks, Melinda. A public inquiry into the assassination of Maltese investigative journalist Daphne Caruana Galizia has found the state responsible for her death. The report says the state had failed to recognize risks to the reporter's life and take reasonable steps to avoid them. Called a one-woman WikiLeaks, Caruana Galizia uncovered networks of corruption in the country and abroad. Let's head over to our London studios where Simon Pusey has more international news and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said China's possible involvement in Afghanistan could be a positive thing.
A willingness to engage meaningfully in the peace process. I think that
Mr. Blinken said this was if China was looking towards a peaceful resolution of the conflict and a truly representative and inclusive government. His comments came after Taliban representatives visited China. China said it saw the Taliban playing an important role in the peace process and the rebuilding of Afghanistan. 9 Taliban representatives had on Wednesday travelled to Tianjin for the talks. Turkish authorities have launched an investigation into a massive forest fire that has spread in southern Turkey.
Geniş bir alanda süren yangının en kısa zamanda
President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said his government hoped to put out the blaze without further casualties. 3 people have died and 10 people have been trapped in one of the forest fires. Firefighters continue to battle the raging forest fires near the city of Antalya in southern Turkey for the second day in a row. Authorities reported 18 villages were evacuated to allow residents to escape the flames. Tunisian President Kais Saied has dismissed the head of the national television station and appointed a provisional replacement. Earlier, Mr. Saied sacked a large number of senior government officials. He assumed executive and judicial powers at the weekend after suspending parliament and removing the prime minister. The president's opponents have accused him of staging a coup, but he insists that he acted within his powers at a time of crisis. Burundi has agreed to receive COVID jabs, but the government says it will not urge people to get vaccinated. That's according to the health minister. The government said the vaccines were proposed by the World Bank, and they made the decision to welcome them. However, the government will not mobilize people to be vaccinated, and only those who need it could go and seek the jab. Burundian authorities have been skeptical about the vaccines and previously said they would monitor how effective they are elsewhere before agreeing to let them in. Protesters have clashed with police in the Colombian capital Bogotá 3 months after the beginning of the national strike in the country. Bogota's Metropolitan Police reported 6 police officers getting hurt during the protest. Colombia has seen protests against President Ivan Duque since April 2021, and some of them have ended in vandalism, roadblocks and clashes between police and protesters. They are considered the largest, longest and most violent demonstrations in the history of the country. A strong and shallow magnitude 8.2 earthquake has hit the Alaskan Peninsula, prompting tsunami warnings and heightened surveillance across the Pacific. There have been no immediate reports of damage, and the tsunami alerts were later lifted. Authorities had issued alerts for the southern parts of Alaska and Pacific coastal areas, warning residents to move to higher ground. The incident also put other Pacific countries on alert. Local media in Japan reports that the country is not at risk, although they may experience changes in their tide levels. The Ever Given container ship, which blocks the Suez Canal for nearly a week in March, has finally arrived in the Dutch port of Rotterdam. The ship grounded on March the 23rd and sealed shut one of the world's busiest waterways to then spend more than 3 months impounded by the Suez Canal Authority in a dispute over compensation with its owners. The 400-metre vessel, loaded with about 18,300 containers, took 3 weeks to make the voyage from Egypt to the Netherlands. And finally, all eyes were on British Prime Minister Boris Johnson at an official engagement as he engaged in a battle with his umbrella. Mr Johnson struggled to control his umbrella during the unveiling of the UK Police Memorial in the Midlands to honour police officers who have died in the line of duty. Britain's Prince Charles, sitting next to Boris Johnson, was seen chuckling at the situation. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.
Time now for some sports news. There's been reactions on the decision of the Athletics Integrity Unit to clear 12 Nigerian athletes out of 22 to compete at the ongoing Tokyo Olympic Games. The 10 athletes not cleared, according to the AIU, did not meet the compulsory out-of-competition testing conditions required to compete at the Games, which should have been provided by the Athletics Federation of Nigeria, AFN.
With just hours to the commencement of the track and field events in Tokyo, the Athletics Integrity Unit reveals that 18 athletes are not eligible to compete because the minimum testing requirement under Rule 15 of the anti-doping rules were not met by Category A federations. Unfortunately, Nigeria is the most affected country, with 10 athletes dropped.
Well, the issues about the missed test or the period of test that they should have done for everybody, the best way to do it is we have a registered to keep our national agency, anti-doping agency, on prim and proper standards so that they have enough funds to run this test over the period of time.
Debutants in the track and field events for Nigeria, triple jumper Ruth Usara, Annette Atiku-Wike for hammer throw, Chioma Onyekwere for discus, and some athletes listed in the relay events did not make it despite working hard to qualify for the Games.
I don't think this has happened anywhere in the world before. I've never heard of this story before, that you get to the Games and you're not competing because of the incompetence of the people that are meant to be in charge. So unfortunately, I'm devastated for the guys that are there who are meant to be in the right frame of mind to compete.
Let me even leave ministry and federation. The coaches, they know the athletes have qualified. Are you telling me my athletes will be in the Olympic team? And I know that if it doesn't go for like 3 out of competition dope tests, you won't be eligible. I'm a coach and I will not know that.
With Team Nigeria yet to make its mark at the ongoing Games, the recent development has put a dent on the hopes for medals in the sports that have produced 13 of the 25 medals won by Nigeria at the Olympic Games.
At the end of sporting activities for today, China displaced host Japan at the top of the medals table, where China now have a total of 31 medals comprising 15 gold, 7 silver and 9 bronze. Japan have 15 gold, 4 silver and 7 bronze medals. Well, completing the top 3 is the United States with 14 gold, 14 silver and 10 bronze medals. That's a total of 38. That sports news is back to you, Millicent.
Many thanks, Ayotunde. And the main news again. A U.S. court today issued an arrest warrant for the Deputy Commissioner of Police, Abba, Kyari, over his alleged roles and the fraud involving Hush Puppy. The Inspector General of Police has ordered an internal review of the allegations. That's news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker. Stay safe.